Listen Lanarkshire is a community radio station governed by the registered charity Getting Better Together Limited. Therefore, the radio station itself retains political neutrality, and any political views or comments aired as part of political discussion programming or otherwise are not the views of Listen Lanarkshire, nor of Getting Better Together Limited. The station has a set of key commitments found on the Ofcom website, and we adhere to all necessary Ofcom rules. For more information or inquiries, please contact us at radio@shotshealthyliving.com.
Hello and welcome back to What's the Point, the show where we ask the questions no one else will, dig where no one wants us to, and leave political spin doctors wishing they'd pulled a sickie. I'm your host, Greg Lennon, community campaigner, part-time planning rebel, and full-time thorn in the side of any administration that thinks transparency means printing things on a frosted glass. If there's a scandal brewing, a point of order needing raised, or a contract mysteriously missing £31 million of context, odds are I've already sent a strongly worded email. Gentleman posted about it on Facebook and mildly infuriated the Labour leadership before breakfast. And as always, I am joined by the man who believes council procedure should be a competitive sport, Jerry Brennan, the Belsy Hill bowler himself, and Bells Hill's answer to a legal disclaimer. Just for the good folks at home, just so you're aware, Jerry once raised a point of order at his brother's wedding, got ejected for a bowling club for challenging the AGM minutes, and once FOI'd his own inbox just to prove a point. He's got the sharpest mind in local government, and he's the only man I know that takes minutes at funerals. Jerry Brennan, welcome to What's the Point again.
Thank you, Greg, and as always, it's an extraordinary pleasure to be here.
And tonight, Jerry, we're keeping it local. Everything tonight is about North Lanarkshire, because joining us is a councillor who's been busier than the council's comm team during the budget week.
A man of much renown.
And we
Greg.
also invited him on to talk about his favourite subject matter, himself.
Paul Di Mascio.
This is Councillor Paul Di Mascio, for leading the charge to save the John Smith swimming pool to standing firm in the brown bin petition, and daring to question that £31 million mystery payout, Paul, that even the auditors flinched at. Paul's not just rocking the boat, he's handing out the t-shirts and naming the crew. Ahoy there, Paul.
Ahoy, gentlemen, ahoy.
Good to have you here, Paul.
Thank you for having me, gents.
So buckle in. This is local politics with no filter, no fluff, and definitely no PowerPoint presentations to be seen anywhere. This is What's the Point. And if you've got a question, a comment, or a conspiracy theory about your council tax, please feel free to call us on 07379 399 228, and we'll be taking the questions roughly about 8:15 this evening, because if you don't ask, you're probably just paying. Thank you, Jerry.
Paul Di Mascio. What a guest.
What a guest.
What a guest. Hey, listen, we're not going to change the format just to accommodate you, because you're one of our colleagues. You're special, but you're not that special, right? So we're going to begin with a normal tell us a bit about your political journey, Paul, how you ended up here, and try and make it exciting.
Try and make it exciting. Oh my God, that's difficult.
Build it up.
Always had a healthy interest in politics, always greatly interested in politics, and followed politics, etc. But I guess, like a lot of people, 2015, that I guess was my awakening. I joined the SNP, which I'm no longer a member of, clearly.
Are you a one-party boy, Paul? Or were you a member of any other political groups?
I was never a member of another party, no. But yeah, became involved in the SNP after 2015, or from 2015 onwards. Very active at that point in time locally. As I say, always had a keen interest in local politics, but yeah, became particularly active from 2015 onwards, and was asked by a few individuals and to run for local council. the council elections, which I came round to, and to my surprise, I was actually selected to run and elected. So I'm now halfway through my second term.
It's quite a meteoric rise, though. I mean, from joining in
Clearly
2015, well, from joining in 2015 to being an elected member in 2017, because was that your first successful election campaign, 2017?
Yes.
So you've been a councillor for quite a wee while now. What kind of changes have you seen over those 8 years or so?
Well, obviously, from a personal perspective, obviously I saw out my first term within the SNP, but some other individuals a couple of years around this table and potentially elsewhere, that changed a couple of years ago, when I was expelled from the SNP group.
Naughty boy.
Do you know, as we go on with this show, actually, there is going to be a pattern of behaviour that develops.
Yeah, I think
I don't want to put a spoiler out.
If I'm being honest, I think you're doing yourself a disservice there as well, Paul, because when you were a member of the SNP, you held a number of pivotal roles within that group. You were the business manager at one point. You'd also had significant positions on Scotland XL. You were part of all sorts of things in the outskirts and peripheries of the party framework and structure. So I think you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice, if I'm being honest, just to try and boil it down to I was an SNP member and then I get kicked.
Do you know, that's a good point. The first time I came across the very smooth Paul Di Mascio, right, was probably around about 2017 in the Uddingston and Bellsill AGM, where Paul chaired that and chaired it very well. And I mean that was the first time.
Wasn't available that night?
You were watching Coronation Street that night.
I think I was dyeing my hair.
But we'll leave that there. The Lady Grecian is clearly no working. But anyway, Paul chaired that, and that was the first time I came across you, and you came across as, you know, more than competent, absolutely on your brief, and a very impressive. Very impressive chair.
Leads us nicely into the next sort of round of questions in relation to Paul. Now, Paul, what happens in this programme is we try to just have a chat with people, get them to open up, loosen up, and then start to talk about the things that's really important to them. So as Jerry says, you were all over your brief in relation to that AGM, but obviously in the last couple of weeks you've been all over your brief in relation to a number of subject matters that's taking place within the council. So whether we start talking about the brown bin charges, where you took that petition in and forcefully were removed for that committee meeting, or if it's a case that we start to talk about that context surrounding that £31 million black hole that's just all of a sudden appeared in North Lanarkshire because you were one of the people that Amey's lawyers cited as a witness in that court case. And in addition to that as well, we can also talk about,
there's many things. We've got John Smith, which you're very, very vocal about just now as well. So where do you want to start? What subject matter do you think that you were just going to dive into? Where do you want to go?
Go I guess chronological order.
Right, let's go then. Brown bin charges.
Bins,
Let's do it.
So, Paul, you attended an Environment and Climate Change Committee just last month.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And on the 19th of June, you attended full council. And you broadly asked the same question, right, of both conveners.
Indeed.
And in one of them, you were kicked out, you were ejected. And in the other one, you weren't. Can you tell us a wee bit about
what the difference was?
What happened? Why was there such a stark difference?
Good question, gentlemen. I think, again, you mentioned that there may be a theme here. I think there may well be a theme of bullying, absolutely.
Harassment.
Yeah. Democratic deficit.
Was
what I was going to suggest, but
political bias.
I can't disagree. Absolutely, all of that. So, you know,
what did you ask for?
In the council at the moment? So yes, for anybody that's unaware, I'm sure the many couple of listeners. Sorry, joking, gents.
Is that right, Paul? Last invitation on here, Jerry, I'm just saying.
So on both occasions, I requested that we drop standing orders to raise an agenda item.
Right.
Which was?
Because the rules state that you have to do so, basically, that you can't add an agenda item. So you have to ask the Chamber to vote on whether they wish to drop standing orders to add that agenda item. So in the first instance, it was to open up a discussion about the brown bin charges, which were about to come into place.
Yeah. Right.
Last week, I think you said it was the 19th of June.
19th of
Full
June.
Council requested that we drop standing orders in order to discuss the position, in order to add an agenda item to ask the leader of the council, in fact, to address the Chamber and update the Chamber on the position with John Smith Pool in Airdrie, which is within, slightly outside my ward. It's within Airdrie. I represent Airdrie. I'm an Airdrie councillor. I can go into that certainly in more detail.
Yeah, we'll come to that. We'll come to that.
But we've, as you say, asked exactly the same thing at Environment and Growth Committee with regards to the brown bin charges. We went round the houses for about 10 minutes and I was eventually kicked out of the Chamber.
So
that's the long and short of it. Whereas at full council last week we went straight to a vote.
Well, I'm going to come again back to the question. What was the difference? Because ultimately, for those at home who really don't know about anything at all to do with the council and what the council process is, you raised a suspension of standing order so that matter can be debated, and in that first meeting you were villainised, and for what I witnessed in relation to the webcast of that meeting,
it was appalling conduct
in relation to what the chair started today, and in relation to the Lord Provost's conduct as well. I thought it was rather shocking.
Yep.
So you take that meeting and then you come to the full council meeting and you say the same thing in relation to a different subject matter, and all of a sudden, no problem, go straight to a vote, and because you didn't get the vote, which was 2/3 majority, which is absolutely ridiculous, and that's the system that we operate with.
44 to 29, but there's a 2/3 majority.
So a 2/3 majority is required for you to have that discussion just to get an update on what's happening with the John Smith Pool. And again, do you think the system is designed in such a way where Labour keeps control absolutely every discussion point? Because a 2/3 majority, if I was to go to my local football team tonight and be part of the wee committee group that's involved in that, if we operated in a 2/3 majority, we would never get anything done. You would never have any differing opinion. So why are we having that in North Lanarkshire?
Because I honestly think that in North Lanarkshire we kind of take we try and mirror North Korea. the Duma, or the Presidentium, or the Dictatorium, whatever it is that you want to call it. But it's certainly not designed for debate.
No.
And to create a situation where, in order for a debate to take place, where how many people signed that petition in relation to the brown bins?
At the time, this will give folk at home a laugh as well.
It was huge.
1,700 people had signed the petition. But once the video dropped to you being kicked out the chamber, there was an additional 700 people that signed the petition overnight on that basis alone. So the fact that people are starting to wake up into Labour's control.
At last.
There is a democratic deficit. You mentioned it earlier, Paul. There is completely a democratic deficit. You elect your councillors to go in there and stand up on subject matters that's important to you, and if your councillors can't even get to a position where you can raise that matter, such as John Smith Pool, because you're being outvoted because you don't reach a 2/3 majority.
It's got to be a straight majority. 51 v 49. That's exactly. It. We have the debate.
100%.
The point is, each and every individual councillor was elected on the same basis and
stand up for
should be able to put across their point of view, and as long as it's in a mannerly and respectful or a respectful manner. Ironically, on the first occasion in the climate change committee, eventually, on that specific committee, I was accused of disrespect, and I was being accused of disrespect for the chair, totally politely asking basically for, as I've already
Can I ask you a
outlined,
question?
but I was being disrespected by the chair, and you had the Lord Provost and others jumping in to second the chair and coerce her into kicking me out the chamber, and because they have the numbers, and this is where you get the democratic deficit more often than not in North Lanarkshire Council. Labour, with the support of three independents and a couple of others, have got the numbers basically to do what they want, and that's what they're doing. So instead of having a democratic body, within North Lanarkshire Council, you basically have, what was it you called it earlier, Jerry?
Well, you have a presidentium.
A presidentium.
Or a dictatorium.
Can I ask you something? Has anybody approached you to apologise?
Surely.
Surely somebody's came forward to you to say, by the way, the way we treated you during that environment and climate change meeting was absolutely appalling. And we hope that we've shown a different side in relation to the full council.
Absolutely not.
Has the leader of the council, has the leader of the council been in touch?
No.
Has the Lord Provost been in touch?
No.
So the convener, surely?
Absolutely not.
What about your ward partner?
Mr. McBride?
Yeah.
No. Who was seeking to
do you know
second
do you know what was brilliant?
kick me out the chamber? He was beaten to it by the Provost.
Do you know, there was such desperation, Greg, to eject Paul, right? It was almost as if the whole thing had been staged to ensure that at some point someone could cry, I want to invoke Standing Order 50 and eject Councillor Di Mascio out of here. They couldn't wait to second it. There was like 2 seconders. I'll second it. And I'll second it again. Came from Councillor Duffy.
Would you call that, Paul, a pile-on? Would you call that a pile-on?
Absolutely.
Because you went to raise a question about a petition that carried at that point 1,700 signatures.
Absolutely. Rumour has it that all conveners were then invited to trainings. I don't know if that had some effect when it came to the committee last week, but it's just not on. But the only reason I think there was any change last week was because of the focus and because people had been made aware of it, and it was just about public perception, and the Provost didn't want to be in the same position as Councillor Loughran, who chaired the Environment Committee, because it was embarrassing for her, quite frankly.
I've been to quite a few of the committees where the performance by the conveners has left a lot to be desired.
It's very generous.
I need to ask you an honest question. Do you think that the Labour administration in North Lanarkshire Council, through its conveners, has been perhaps misusing standing orders to stifle debate or manipulate reasonable requests like yours to suspend standing orders in order to create a situation where they can eject PCNL members? Because during this term of the council, between 2022 and now, the only individuals who've been ejected have been members of Progressive Change North Lanarkshire.
I can quantify that. In the previous term, there was nobody ejected for a council meeting. Nobody. Nobody. So the only time this rule has been invoked is when our group is performing its critical scrutiny
on occasion role. In the last term, I'm sure a few occasions individuals were asked to address.
They were warned.
Yeah, warned.
They were warned.
So there was no warning for me.
Yeah. I remember a full council meeting, and you'll remember it. I think it was coming to the end of the last term, and it was a full council meeting. And basically, what had happened was, I think it was Big Davy Baird who was the councillor at the time. It was hilarious, and he came on, and it was they couldn't get a time frame for a vote and a motion or whatever it was. And Big Davy played the countdown theme tune. Remember?
Yeah.
Countdown theme tune, and they were trying to get them ejected.
Did they put it on the speaker?
Put it on the speaker, but basically, if anybody, that was a fantastic comedy moment. But anyway, it sums up that chamber. I'm going to come back to it. Would you quantify yourself or classify yourself as a rabble rouser, Paul? Are you somebody just going in there to cause trouble?
So again, one of the reasons I ended up leaving the SNP again was a democratic deficit there. I'm not going to go into the details of why we all ended up leaving.
Go on, Paul. Come on.
But, some people may know that the then leader of the council had to resign, and there was a lot of friction at that time. So again, I've went off on a total tangent. But when I see something that's undemocratic, that's unfair, and particularly as a councillor, if I don't think my constituents have been represented or getting good value from their council, then I'll speak up. Absolutely.
Here's a question, right? Just as
and that's what we would expect of them.
As an elected member, what do you see your primary role? What's your primary role as a councillor?
To represent your constituents. That's the bottom line. Whether that's on a personal basis with regards to issues that they may be having, or at a committee level. So that's the two main aspects that you have as a councillor, is dealing with your constituents and any problems they may have, and then stuff that's going through committee and making decisions.
So really, in effect, what you're saying is the people that elected you, that's who you're there to represent. Are you there to represent the council, Paul, in the best interests of the council and taking all the council's agenda forward?
Only if that's in the best interest of my
your
constituents.
Exactly. That's the part that I think's lost in North Lanarkshire.
I've watched Paul at committee. I had the pleasure of sitting next to Paul at committee when he has been in his full pomp in terms of scrutinising the business of committees, and it's one of the things that he does particularly well. Do you think that it's a coincidence that you're one of the most forthright scrutinisers within the council, and that was perhaps one of the reasons why you were perhaps ejected?
Partly that, but I think I would say progressive change North Lanarkshire, PCNL, however you want to call us as a party. I would go as far as to say that we're certainly a thorn in the side of the administration and others, because we do speak up for our constituents, and that's first and foremost. I went off on a total tangent there. What was your question?
Do you think the administration know how to cope?
So in general, I think I personally think progressive change are targeted because they speak up and they're a thorn in the side.
But it's members. Councillors.
It's members as individual members as a whole, and I do believe we're treated differently.
Which again, I'm going to quantify. Do you think they bully? Do you think they intimidate? Do you think they threaten? Do you think they use tactics that would be unacceptable in any other workplace?
Well, going back to the democratic process and how standing orders are set up.
So it's such a politician, isn't it?
I'm just trying to figure out who's going to intimidate you.
They've shaped and reshaped, various full council meetings, standing orders, the rules of the council.
I would say 100%. Right, so thank God we got there.
No, I was getting there, but I think the starting point is the rules and regulations and the standing orders. They keep changing them to manipulate that in the first instance. But see if that's not enough, they'll just manipulate what they've manipulated.
I'm going to
make it up as we go along.
I'm going to make a comment right now. This is what I believe to be the case. Now it may not be the case, but this is what I believe. That is my personal opinion and belief, right?
Okay. Disclosure for the Standards Commission for Scotland.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. I'm safe on that ground now. So the first committee after the Environment and Climate Change Committee, where the brown bin thing was quashed, was the Housing Committee. Right? I believe that committee were primed for other members of the group, including you and myself, to go into that Housing Committee.
I was going to be there.
to do the same thing, right? So I remember going in and everything's pretty quiet, and on that occasion it was the quickest Housing Committee that I've ever been at, and at that committee I think everybody was prepared to use the standing orders to kick these rabble-rousers out, so they were so focused on that alone they forgot about the agenda. They forgot about what was on the papers, and on the papers was reports to do with the spending of around £120 million.
That was the contracts.
Right, for new build contracts, and not one other single member from another group asked a scrutinising question about the value of the contracts, about the value per unit, which to my mind was extraordinarily high, and that to me just set out what the democratic deficit was in that chamber that day.
I mean, even more often than not, I'm still surprised by the lack of questioning from the SNP or the main opposition in North Lanarkshire. What gets me is I can't understand why there are how many SNP councillors?
25.
25. There's 7 progressive change councillors, and we seem to be scrutinising more.
I've got a theory about that, Paul. I've got a theory. It's called the payroll analysis. I'm just saying.
Tell us about the
payroll analysis. So basically, Paul, the way it works in North Lanarkshire Council, I'm sure you're fully aware that the Labour leader pays certain individuals for political groups enhanced payments. So whether through committee convenerships, the SNP leader is the only person that doesn't have a specified role but still gets an enhanced payment, which has always baffled me, absolutely baffled me. But when you're blocking opposition like that, and if it's a case, regardless of whether true or false, I think that the optics of it alone demonstrate that it's highly questionable that if you're taking an enhanced payment off the leader of the council and you're not really coming and being forthright at committees in relation to scrutiny, and I think that the general public's going to make its mind up that perhaps your pay may be in a wee bit of jeopardy if you don't follow that course. But as I say, it's not for me to say anything, it's just only what I believe.
Money is the root of all evil, so as they say.
I'm going to ask you two a question, and it's a legitimate question. Given the performance of this current Labour leader, and in addition to that, if you look at his leadership team and those in convenerships and positions, it's been quite a dodgy wee turn for them over the last couple of years, to be perfectly honest. So we've seen again removal of school transport, we've seen the attempt to shut down community facilities across the authority. My goodness, what a blunder that was. And then a U-turn reversal on that, but it's coming back again this year.
He's had his own internal challenges as well from within his group.
He's also now responsible for a £31 million black hole, reported black hole that was in the Sunday Mail at the weekend. And in addition to that as well, the list just keeps growing and growing and growing in relation to his leadership. Right now, this is the question. Since there is no leader, because there is no leadership being shown at this stage, we are unaware of what that settlement figure out of court with Amey PLC was. In addition to that, who signed that off? Who has the authority to sign off on that out-of-court settlement for that £31 million? Do you think the National Labour Party, the Scottish Labour Party, must be sitting, pulling their hair out in regards to the way North Lanarkshire is being run? Or do you think it's a case that they're quite happy because of the level of toxicity that exists within North Lanarkshire just to let them go on with it?
I'll speak first, Paul, if you don't mind. I mean, I think everything focuses on the biggest project that the council has embarked on in the last 15 years, which was the Enterprise project. Well, it wasn't. It was a 2.25 billion pounds contract. Two sides of that contract. The first one was housing repairs and corporate repairs, which went to Mears. They gobbled up 1.8 billion of that contract, and the remainder of that, it was 450 million, was picked up by Hochtief, who a German engineering company who took over from Amey, who were the incumbent, and they had been the incumbent, I think, since 2010, 2014. In between that time, they had taken it, and there had been some contract extensions along the way to keep it going. On the one side of that, on the Mears side, we had the disgraceful news coming via whistleblower that KPIs had been fraudulently changed, so the date of repairs, etc., had been made, and that happened over a very short period of time, relatively short period of time. They found 13,000 examples of fraudulent activity where the completion date for repairs had been doctored, some of them to the tune of around 126 days. Now, that was important because all of those performance reports go to committee, go to the Scottish Government, and effectively none of them could be trusted during that period, and neither could those in the period prior to when the investigation took place.
Was Audit Scotland brought in at that point? Did they have to come in?
At that point there was an internal audit, as I understand
Scotland, as I understand it, were watching over that contract, were they no providing an eye, because the external auditor was involved in that process also.
So there's an argument that the regulatory bodies
We're aware,
yeah, and perhaps did not act as they might have in terms of coming down hard on the council. The second part of that contract was the roads and infrastructure,
which was apparently the gold standard,
which had been apparently managed in line with all procurement law and legislation. The North Lanarkshire Council spent a colossal amount of money in an attempt to protect the council and its council taxpayers from being dragged into court as a result of that contract being awarded.
So was this where the £4 million was spent on external consultants?
So on that contract, on that enterprise project, there was £4.2 million paid to external consultants and to external legal organisations to provide comfort that every I had been dotted, every T had been crossed, so that if anyone putting a tender in had the temerity to take the council to court, the council could quite confidently, defend that case and defend it right to the hilt, to the point where they would say, well, you dare take us to court because we've done all that we need to do in terms of due diligence.
So we've spent millions already
and
before the contract's been awarded.
Absolutely. And at the very first challenge, the first time we're pursued by Amey, we settle. And we have settled the last amount that we had when we were cited, because Paul, you and I were cited. I was cited just before the Christmas holidays. What a Christmas present that was. You've been cited to attend court in August 2025 as a witness for Amey. Against my own council. As a councillor of North Lanarkshire Council, I was being asked time and time again to provide a witness statement that would potentially impact negatively on my council.
So I want to stop your flow here. I just want to ask a quick question. Originally, the Amey was challenging for, was it
45 million pounds?
45 million pounds. And everybody that was cited, it was only Progressive Change members that were cited as witnesses for Amey PLC. Now,
I can tell you why.
And again, and in relation to that court case, I'm going to let you back in, but I just want to recap where we're at the moment. North Lanarkshire Council spent £4.2 million on external consultants to make sure that this was the gold standard contract.
Yes.
We were extremely secure and comfortable in the knowledge that if there was any legal challenge, we would be able to defend that to the hilt and make sure that, having spent that £4.2 million, that we would not potentially be liable within that.
That's about just to put that into context, that's about a third of your council tax money.
So where I'm going with this is just to recap. Again, we end up in a position where this gold standard procurement exercise with £45 million. What would the process be for that then, if it was a case that you and Paul and others for Progressive Change got took to court and they were awarded that £45 million? I've got a sneaky suspicion you would be villainised in that process,
Greg,
because ultimately your evidence secured a defeat for North Lanarkshire Council within that legal claim.
So something happened, right? Something happened between the round about the 19th of December, when we were first cited. There was 4 of us cited, myself, Paul, Councillor Jim Hume and Councillor David Crichton.
Yep.
Now, the 4 of us were cited to attend court against our council because we had the temerity to ask difficult questions about the award of a 2.25 billion pound contract, and it was purely because there was a glaring discrepancy in 2 reports, and that was around comments that had been made by the Chief Officer for procurement. Our Councillor Jim Hume had asked him why in the reports it said that the tenders were coming in at roughly the same price as we were currently paying Amey, but the award to Hockteeth had been made based purely on price because their bid was giving us 26% savings. Now, both of those statements cannot exist in the same room.
No.
And Jim Hume asked the officer repeatedly to give an explanation for this, and he did not get one. And in fact, the provost had to intervene and say that he could not compel him to provide a better answer. And at that point, Greg, that's when I think Amey's solicitors went, this is not right.
Yeah.
This is an extraordinary low bid for that contract, and that's a red flag in terms of procurement law.
So I'm going to stop boring people at home. I want to go on to the juicy bits of this, so to speak. I'm going to come straight to where we are now. Sunday Mail ran an article. We mentioned it last week, Jerry.
A very good article by
we mentioned it last Tuesday
journalist
on this show that potentially was an out-of-court settlement to the tune of £31 million. So that's a reduction for the 45
It was a reduction,
million.
yep.
And again, taking into consideration, we spent 4.2 million protecting ourselves in this process to make sure.
Perhaps wasted 4.2 million pounds.
Who has the authority in our council to sign off on an out-of-court settlement? What would the process for that be then? If you could explain that. Who has that?
So, what happened recently, and without any notification to elected members, by the way, and I'm going to set the scene even before then. No elected councillor in North Lanarkshire Council had been made aware, as I understand it, from the council that we were being pursued by Amey for £45 million going back to last year. There was no notification.
So there was no committee?
No committee.
Because I've looked as well, Jerry. I
No
can't see it
report.
in any community committee meeting minute. I can't see it in any budget template. I can't see it anywhere. No. And I've looked for significant time to see if that appears anywhere, and there's nothing.
It's absolutely possible that we would all have been unaware,
unless you were cited.
No. We had done some digging around, as we do, as councillors should do, looking through court records for any potential cases that might be of interest, and lo and behold,
a lot of free time, do you?
One appeared, and it was North Lanarkshire Council, and we were going, what the hell is this? Because it appeared out of the blue.
Yeah.
So we started asking questions about it, didn't get too many answers, and lo and behold, the article appears in the paper. North Lanarkshire Council have settled. Not only have they settled, but they've settled, and they have, and we know this because we've been advised by the monitoring officer of North Lanarkshire Council that King's Council were involved, representing North Lanarkshire Council, and that'll have come at a considerable cost too. They have settled, and the arrangement or the agreement is favourable. They say it's favourable to North Lanarkshire Council, but they have slapped a confidentiality clause on that agreement, so we will never, ever find out what that settlement actually was, and we will never find out what the impact on council taxpayers in North Lanarkshire Council is going to be, because it's legally protected.
Importantly, we've asked questions.
I'm going to come to that.
And I don't know who. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest. We've poured through the document that gives delegated authority to particular individuals within the council to see who has the power, who has the delegated authority given to them by elected members like us to make those decisions on our behalf. And I can't find it.
Well, surely the buck stops with the leader of the council then.
Without doubt.
Surely the buck stops there. But my next point in that is again that figure of £31 million. So
31.1.
because that's really what we have to then work on. If there's a non-disclosure agreement there and it's favourable for the council, well, the only thing that would be favourable for the council was to settle on that 31 million.
31's less than 45, Greg.
Less
so you're
than
saving
45,
saving 14 million.
How did we come across that figure, Jerry?
We didn't.
We didn't.
No.
Where did the figure come from?
I received that figure in court papers.
You received that
I
figure in
received
court
those figures
papers?
in court papers.
Wow.
So I felt at the time, because the case was live, that it would have been inappropriate for me to speak publicly about that.
Yeah.
But now that case is settled and it's concluded, I have that document.
Yeah. And you have that specifically
I have that figure.
31 million. So we have to work on that premise.
That's the only figure we can work from.
That's the only one that we can work off.
Absolutely.
During that time, I remember you raising complaint with me in relation to a citation that you received from sheriff officers that came straight to the Civic Centre. And I think at that time your mail had been kind of opened.
It had been opened and resealed.
Why do you think that would have happened?
It's a very, very good question, Greg. I mean, any mail that's addressed to me or to you that's confidential in nature, that's come via recorded delivery, should only be opened by my dainty wee fingers.
Because it's recorded delivery, because it specifically states for Jerry Brennan.
It says who it's for. It's not meant to be opened by anyone else. But I had two documents that were tampered with, and I can't remember if it was Paul's or David's. Councillor David Crichton's mail had been tampered with as well. So at that point, I immediately notified the chief officer at that time, Archie Aitken, head of North Lanarkshire Council's Legal and Democratic section. I contacted the Court of Session in Edinburgh, and I contacted sheriff officers who had delivered that, and I contacted as well the solicitors who were dealing with Amey.
I know you keep notes all the time, Jerry, and I know you write everything down in that wee pad of yours. It would be wonderful if you had that wee pad there to read out that statement for the council leader that cited what progressive change was again. Was it conspiracy theorists and all these other lovely, meaningful, diminishing comments that came out, and everything that we've said is proven to be correct?
I'll leave it with this one, but some of the comments were like each iteration that we made was conspiratorial.
Yeah.
There was no basis of fact in any question that we ever say.
Yeah.
That questions that we ask are repetitive.
Yeah.
And that we what was the term that he made? Tantamount to bullying.
Says the man.
Says the man.
Says the man.
Says the man who heads an administration that quite regularly seeks to eject.
Aye, it's members.
Members
I can advise you. I've written to the council leader asking him, which I think is a pretty urgent question. Who authorised this? It's really that simple. Who authorised this £31 million, considering we're about to enter into a budget setting process again, where we're going to find a £31 million potentially black hole coming for next year, which is going to impact services, it's going to impact everything in regards to how the budget setting process is there. But not only that, we're also looking at a potential 10% council tax rise year on year minimum to pay for it.
So we've been told.
How does that work?
The ground's been laid.
The ground has been laid, as far as I'm concerned. Paul, you made, just looking at the impacts of these in our communities.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to choose the John Smith pool.
Yep.
Because that's in your ward. But you made a video recently about the ongoing closure of the John Smith pool. Are you concerned that might not reopen because there is no money to carry out the essential repairs that need to be done at that pool?
I think that's what's being alluded to, but by the leader of the council. But listen, make no mistake. This administration wanted to close all the, well, not all the, but they had a review.
Only 39. Only 39.
They wanted to, close 39, Jerry, thank you. 39 centres, including swimming pools and
one here.
2 or 3 swimming pools, one in Shorts.
We're in Shorts.
One in Bells Hill.
Yeah, Matt Busby.
And various other centres, community centres and so on. But yeah, strangely enough, there was an election around about that time, and the national leadership, Anna Sawar, went on radio to announce 2 days before an election in South Lanarkshire, a by-election for, I think it was Cambuslang.
It was for Hamilton and Rutherglen.
Was it Hamilton?
It was the one Michael Shanks won. It was the MP. It was the Westminster by-election.
So all of a sudden, there was a huge public pressure, and which was heartwarming. We certainly campaigned and worked hard to make sure that there was a U-turn, but there was huge public pressure, and it told when national leadership had to step in. But make no mistake, this administration wants to close our leisure and community facilities, and they're doing it currently by stealth. And the issue with John Smith Pool arose just at the turn of the new year. The pool was closed all of a sudden because of an issue, and I can't put it any other way. It's been like drawing teeth for 6 months, pulling teeth for 6 months, trying to get information.
Does it fit the narrative
to find out why and what's happening?
Does it fit the narrative that the Labour administration are employing a strategy of managed decline of these services?
Are you asking me or are you asking Paul?
I'm putting it out to you both.
To the both. I would say yes. I would say they favour a model in relation to the new town hub model. That's what I would say. The Labour administration has been sort of a champion of that model, and looking to try and, to a certain degree, look at all council assets across the authority and close ones that are potentially easy to close, so that they can then start to look at the building.
That's the concern.
These things.
So this ties into the town vision.
So that's the one. It's the town vision thing. So again, for me, however, that model is fantastic in theory, but is it proven? Is it tried and tested? Do we know that the results are going to be the results? But when you start to talk about swimming pools, well, where's the town hall model incorporate swimming pools? Unless you're keeping time capsule, which is a what, Jerry? It's a PFI.
If you're
project,
talking about,
isn't it?
Town hubs incorporating swimming pools, you're 5-10 years down the line. They close the likes of John Smith Pool in Airdrie, which is a 11 Airdrie. I went there as a kid at primary school, growing up, when it was open all the time. Yeah. But again, that's going back to closer by stealth. Mm-hmm. You can't get pool time now. No. Because they've amended the opening times even when it was open. But it's a cherished asset. It's needed, as in all communities, these sort of facilities for mental health, physical health, and well-being.
Do you think there's trappings of new shiny buildings? Do you think there's trappings in local areas for new shiny buildings? Because when you look at the assets that North Lanarkshire Council has, and I think some of them are absolutely fantastic, there is some that's uncared for, unloved. However, again, if you're not putting that level of investment into these assets, then obviously decline is going to happen within it. Yep. Surely it would make more sense, especially in the economic position that we're all in at the moment, that you would invest in the assets that you've already got, because you'll be able to do that cheaper than the 50, 60, 70 million pounds that's going to be required to build a town hub. And as opposed to that, you now find yourself in a position where we're already 31 million in the red. So
plus your 40 million pounds to repay for your PFI repayments every year. So before you kick a ball, you're spending money that you don't have, because of decisions that have been made by Labour administrations of the past. I'm genuinely concerned, but we're seeing it happen in real time with the John Smith Pool. I just look at the Matt Busby centre as well, and I look at the disinvestment in that building over the last time I remember any money really being spent on that was the extension to the front, and that was in the mid-90s.
That's the
Beyond
point.
then,
If they're not investing in these assets just now, there is a natural decline in their viability.
Well, who goes?
That's
you see footfall,
part of the money's decline also.
Footfall
as well as
drops,
times,
income drops, and then all of that. That's very, very strategic, Greg. Hold on a wee minute. I was going to say that's right. If you want to employ a strategy of managed decline, you make it so undesirable to attend it that footfall drops. If footfall drops, you don't get income coming in from memberships, etc. You close part of the gym off. As far as I understand it, Matt Busby, some of the gyms closed off just now, so you won't generate any new. Who's going to be a new member coming in there if part of the gym shut off? So it's all of that, and it's a really insidious way to go about it, but it means that when you do the hard financial assessment over a longer period of time, it looks as if it's just not
back
paying
in the
its
day
way.
as well, it was open most of the time, so people knew. Basically, I'm off today. It's my day off during the week, during the day, and in the evening. You can just go to the swimming baths basically, unless.
Do you think the pandemic helped this along? Do you think the pandemic?
My point there was, sorry, just to finish, is as they amend the opening times, apart from the fact that there's a lack of access there, people just then think, I don't know if the pool's open, I don't know if I'm going to get access, and that also has a knock-on effect in terms of footfall.
I think the question I just asked you is perfectly relevant. So again, do you think the pandemic impacted the figures? Because if I take, for instance, Ian Nicholson Centre in Christen, the numbers that were presented at the time coming out of the pandemic, they were still presenting pandemic figures during that time.
They did.
And again,
quite disgracefully.
And again, when they're presenting the kind of numbers for footfall and usage and everything else, was pandemic. They were shut during lockdown.
Should never have been used.
And again, that was the justification for the closure of the Ian Nicholson Centre. So again, given the fact that John Smith's potentially facing something similar in regards to a potential closure, is it the same sort of figures that we're looking at, pandemic, post-pandemic figures coming through that could coalesce?
I wouldn't be surprised. I would certainly hope not. But yeah, I mean, from my understanding is, although I've not been told this outright, where we are at with John Smith Pool, in terms of what the actual figure is, the figure varies. But my understanding is the leader of the council spoke to a member of the press as opposed to the council, and informed us that, or informed the press that it'll come to committee in August, September. So my presumption is that they're going to present, from what he said, they're going to present this is what's needing done, this is how much we need to spend, and give us option A, B, C, and whatever. And we're going to. I anticipate they're going to give us one bad option against another, i.e., you need to take the money from somewhere else. And as I say, for me, as a resident of North Lanarkshire, or not a resident of Airdrie,
I've got somewhere you can take the money.
John Smith Pool. I'm anticipating if something goes wrong with my local pool, apart from anything else, any other routes for funding where they could apply for funding outside the council, why does the council have what's the word I'm looking for? Reserves? Why would a council hold reserves other than for a rainy day?
For £31 million to say it with a court case.
Well, it might be that. Maybe that's where it went.
I've got an idea. Why are we taking 2% of council tax to invest in these new town hubs, community hub models, everything else? Why are we not taking that 2% and putting it locally for local assets to be invested? Let's say, for talking sake, we took that 2%, I think that would equate to about £3 million.
So about 1.7 million for each percentage.
Right, so 1.7 million pounds for each
3.5 roughly.
Right. So about 3.5 per, let's say, community board area. Right? So if it's a case that you're sitting with that level of investment coming into Shots, for talking sake, let's use Shots as an example. Let's say we've got £3.5 million sitting within the community board structure. Do you think the people of Shorts would rather invest in local assets, or do you think they would rather a brand new shiny hub that really in effect that potentially, again, because of the booking systems and the models and everything else that's operated, we still don't know if it works. So
the
really
Presidentium knows best, Greg.
But surely that would make more sense, because the community board structure, if we look at it on the face of it, is a partnership. It's a partnership between all these people, and it's an answer really to participatory budgeting. But don't get me started on that. Then I'll stay away from participatory budgeting, because
I haven't heard it mentioned once since I was elected.
I think that potentially we could discuss it in another show, for a full show, to be perfectly honest, about how farcical it's been implemented. But a community board structure, let's take that idea. The community board is made up of local groups, local people, local volunteers,
community councils,
community
all of
councils,
that. Yep.
And then it's meant to be in partnership with the council and the voluntary sector and everybody else. Is all sitting around a table to make decisions. Unfortunately for community boards, majority of community boards, I would say, in the authority, perhaps excluding Cumbernauld, because there's a lot of political focus in Cumbernauld, but let's just say Shorts again, with the community board structure in Shorts. If it's a case that we have all these individuals sitting around a table with no power to make decisions, with absolutely no finance to make any key critical investments, why no look at potentially that £3 million coming to community boards for those people who are best placed and in the know and what to invest in the local areas and the local infrastructure? Why would we go absolutely bonkers to a path and a plan that wants to invest in new buildings that are going to cost 50, 60, 70 million pound? I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Open it up, encourage involvement in community boards,
imagine
and
having
give
local
them something they can achieve.
Imagine that.
Greg,
imagine.
Listen, my latest community board, strangely enough, going back to the previous subject, I had about 20 odd people turn up to speak to officers and councillors about
I think that's
the aforementioned John Smith pool.
I think that's the last thing that they want, though.
They don't want. The Labour group
They absolutely do not
want local communities directing that fund, because again, their ambition and their mission, shiny buildings before an election. Let's get our photos took outside.
All they could do is make a little bit of noise.
Us get elected.
All they could do is make a little bit of noise, but what you want is real power.
Well, I want to put a pin in community boards, because I want to come back and to talk about that after the break, and I want to invite somebody in who might have a wee bit of time to come in and have a chat with us about community boards. But I think that again, this subject matter about how this administration's running the council, and as I said again, we're going to come back to it, the level of absolute scandal, in my opinion, that's came at the back of this leadership, Labour, and overseeing how North Lanarkshire councils ran, and even to a certain degree what these councillors are doing and producing now for the authority is absolutely mind-boggling. But they seem to be in the luxurious position that everybody's always voted Labour, so they keep winning by-elections and things like that, because that's just what happens. So there isn't anybody there challenging. This £31 million but just doesn't sit easy with me, and I need to come back to this.
It's well with anyone, Greg.
And within our group launched a petition yesterday calling for the resignation of the Labour leader, which I think deserves a plug, because ultimately this isn't being distasteful or targeted or any of that kind of thing. This is not personal. The point being here is 24 hours has now passed in relation to asking for answers. And who was the person that approved that £21 million potential settlement to a court?
The buck
or 31 million,
the buck
sorry.
Stops. Who is the leader of the council?
That's basically, where is the leadership? Where is the leadership?
Greg, despite this being in the papers, there's been no email that's come from the leader of the council to the 77 elected members explaining what on earth has gone on. Well, and that tells me all I need to know about that.
So really, in effect, a petition is perfectly viable at this stage to call on the leader to resign, do the right thing, and allow somebody else within his group to come forward and actually try and make a difference. Because I'm not going to lie, I think there is a number of talented people sitting within that Labour group, and really, in effect, I think that maybe now is their time to come forward. Because ultimately, as I said again, how many calamitous decisions are we going to see in relation to Labour? And I can think of a couple off the top of my head right now, especially Paul Kelly or Heather Brandon McVeigh, couldn't even stipulate that.
Very competent councillors.
You've got individuals like that are very credible, and they're watching their council and very passionate about the council, and they're watching these kind of plays. It just baffles me.
Indeed.
It baffles me. Okay, on that note, gentlemen, we'll be back after a couple of short songs, and what I want to do after this is come back in to talk about again the idea of the community boards, because I really think that community boards is important to people.
Yep.
I appreciate, Paul, that we'll be looking at another couple of things. I want to do a political highlight of the week, so you can start thinking about that just now. And also what I want to do is take my phone in, Jerry, because I do think we've got a couple of calls. I've already received a couple of emails as well.
Right.
And it'll give us an opportunity to just take a wee breath and come back in a wee minute. And welcome back to What's the Point. Those eagle-eared amongst you would have heard that Jerry Brennan was given one task this evening, and that was to play the songs, and thankfully he did that without flaw. Well done, Jerry.
Seamless transitions.
Seamless transitions. My goodness, a man who is a Luddite. Thank you very much. Anyway, Jerry, Paul, we're joined by a very special guest, our very good friend Mary McIntosh from Shotts, who was a Progressive Change candidate in the last by-election up here, where we came a staggering second place.
Who did we beat?
Bunching the SNP back into submission, Jerry. We punched them into submission and we took Labour right close to the door.
Fifth round, Greg.
Mary, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
It's always a
What
pleasure.
a brilliant introduction.
Well, it's always a pleasure, Mary. Now, Mary, you've been listening to this, what we've been chatting about, and obviously we brought you in because I want to talk about the community boards, and I know you're very, very passionate about the community boards, so you'll have a great opportunity to discuss that. So, what I want to do first is continue on where we were before we kind of left off, and Paul was just highlighting there that currently the John Smith petition has over 2,000 signatures at present.
Yes.
Right, so this is your opportunity to plug that petition, Paul.
So yeah, is this my highlight, political highlight of the week? And it absolutely is. I'm sorry to go back to a previous topic, but I've been greatly heartened by the local support for recent posts and videos on my social media in relation to it that I've uploaded highlighting the issue, and hats off to the local group who put that petition up last week, as it so happens just before a couple of days before full council. It's as you said, Greg, it's sitting at 2,000.
Where would people get
signed.
access to it, Paul?
Where would people get access to it? I'll
media
certainly
page?
be sharing it. I'll be sharing it on all my posts, which are John Smith pool related. I think I uploaded a video over the weekend outlining what had happened last week at full council in relation to the pool. It's the link certainly on there, and I'll continue to share it. But it's on change.org, and it's titled "Save John Smith Pool."
Right, okay, we'll post it on the What's the Point page as well, and Progressive Change page. Right, on to Mary now, because Mary's sitting here patiently to come in.
Patient.
Mary,
That's my middle name.
we will be going in 5 minutes time to the call-in section, right, but I wanted you to come in and just briefly tell us, because you heard my proposal there in relation to community boards. Am I mental? Do you think that I'm absolutely off my rocker because a proposal like that would either no garner any traction in local areas like Shotts, where you had £3.5 million per year recurring every single year to invest in things that you need in this area, and that could be speed bumps, potholes, whatever you
Swing
wish.
parks.
Whatever you wish.
Yeah.
Well, I think really we can all hold our own individual opinions, but it's actually what the community
Yes.
wants.
Yes.
It's what the community wants, and that's one of the things that when the community boards were set up, we were really, really enthusiastic about the community boards. We thought it was something we were getting into, to get in there at the beginning, town hubs, town centres, but then when we got there, we realised actually all this groundwork had been done. And for me personally, I would like to see more investment in our own local area, because a percentage of our community tax, as you've said, is going into all these developments, but as yet there are problems in Shotts. We don't have an interest from private investors. The actual hub, and again there's the town centre and there's the town hub. The town hub would incorporate schools, leisure, etc. Right, all still to be decided. So our money is going in, but we're not seeing any return for that. Do you know? And that's now went on for quite some time. And we do have problems in this area. We don't have private investors wanting to come forward. Our I don't know what our current population is standing at, but you know, part of all the house building is to increase population, to attract retail, etc. But the population figure has really remained quite static. So that could be indicative of people are maybe moving into their own homes, out of their parents' homes, or it could be people are moving into the area but other people are moving out of the area. But I think it goes back to the community having the say on what happens with their own money.
So if there was a proposal, right, hypothetically saying we're in a utopian world, and North Lanarkshire Council, and I'm not going to critique them and be perfectly honest, but they're more engaging, they're more about local democracy, they're more about wanting to make sure that local people are the driving force about decisions that they want to champion. If they were to give you £3.5 million per year or £3.1 million per year, do you think that would be beneficial to the community board process, because then you would have the opportunity to make a difference?
Well, I've got mixed opinions about the community board, because I don't think there are enough different representatives at community boards for that group of people to actually be the decision makers.
Right. So we diversify it more, then we get more local people involved.
Aye, but it's how you do that. You don't need to be a group. Yeah, I'm quite strong in that, because everything is very much group focused and directed, and you've got to be this group to be able to benefit from this or benefit from that. But regarding community boards, I don't firmly believe that all decisions should actually sit within the community boards. It's the people who are directly impacted who and involved in whatever initiative it is that's going on, and it's how you actually how do you move that forward, because they're not, I don't believe the community boards are attracting the right people or the right number of people to attend the community boards meetings. And I know from feedback that I've received myself, people feel that it's not pitched at their level, it's too professional. There's too many professions, and it's a great opportunity, because you've got council, you've got health board, you've got police, you've got fire, you've got like Van El, you've got all the big agencies there. But there appears to be such a focus on their feedback that the community is getting lost.
Is it driving a legislative agenda? That's basically it. Do we have a box to tick in relation to what has to be delivered?
You're such a cynic, Greg.
I think I'm actually being quite realistic.
Well, I do believe in Shotts. Now, I've not been to the past couple of community board meetings, but I know in Shotts that they did have a turnaround, and the community issues came at the beginning of the meeting. So whether that's still the same or not, I'm not sure.
Paul Di Mascio, if your community board had £3.1 million or £3.5 million to invest in local assets, do you think the John Smith pool would be safe?
To go back to that topic again, absolutely. As I said, I turned up at my last community board meeting, and there are, much to my delight, in fact, there were 20 plus members of a local group there to discuss just that. And I'm pretty sure had there been any community funds, then a proposal would have been made that evening to
I think
whatever it takes, we save this.
The concept and the idea is right, that you get community to come to community boards and they can speak for the community, but I just don't think we've got enough numbers or diversity, as you say, Greg,
you can't take away from obviously the individuals who are involved in community boards, and I can't speak for every community board. There's a lot of dedicated individuals who attend those, but it absolutely needs widened and opened up, and
Needs an
more
overhaul. I
powers.
think it's been going for the last few years. We're not ready to do a review in community boards and how successful they are. What's missing?
You referred to ticking a box. Well, you know, in fairness, they have to tick a box.
But
and at the moment we are ticking that box, but we need to do more.
But we had a community board review a few years ago, and then we couldn't actually get the results of that because they said that it wasn't anonymised enough for to get the results. And remember, out of that we got the chair meetings and things, and shots. We wanted our own results brought back to the community board, but
understandable, so
we couldn't achieve that.
Well, I'm going to jump to a caller now. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Aye.
Hi there, how you doing?
Aye, not bad, you.
We're all great here. So we're joined tonight by Jerry Brennan, Paul Di Mascio, myself and Mary McIntosh. What's your point, caller?
My question is that given that the Labour leader has closed a £31 million black hole to the council budget, do you think that he should resign?
do we think he should resign? I'll be honest, I think his resignation should have been there on Sunday, to be perfectly honest. I think that any leader of a council that hasn't come out with leadership right away to quash anything, to say here's the accurate figure, by the way we're looking to do this, or even let's go back, we're going to settle at a court, let's have a full council meeting, to have that as a discussion, I think is absolutely grossly incompetent and maladministration.
It's the nature of the concealment, Greg, that is the biggest issue for me. Now, if that agreement which someone has deemed to be in some way beneficial to the council must be kept secret, then the council taxpayers in North Lanarkshire do not know how much their local services are going to be impacted, or indeed the ability for the council to build and expand on the services that they have, because £31 million, if it is 31 million, buys a hell of a lot of service. And we've had absolutely nothing. It's the concealed nature of it, the lack of information and the lack of respect for 77 members in our council, because not one of them has been given any information about this whatsoever, and that is absolutely deplorable.
Paul?
There's an absolute the word I'm looking for. There's a theme here. I mean, we've mentioned quite a few times about democratic deficit, full transparency. Public and residents of North Lanarkshire should be able to know, and councillors who are elected to represent them should have full disclosure with regards to and oversight with regards to what's happening in North Lanarkshire. Again, I'm sorry to go on about it, but as an example, John Smithpool, there's no transparency there. This just takes it to a whole new level, and at this point, given what we're talking about in terms of a £31 million black hole, bear in mind that's what 2 years council tax. It's time to go.
I asked the question at a previous committee of one of the chief officers of the council as to when North Lanarkshire Council would ever use a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement, and I was told absolutely categorically that officer could see no circumstances whatsoever when a confidentiality clause would be included. And lo and behold, here we are.
But again, I just think it's fascinating that really, in effect, if it was a case that, let's say, Jerry, you were the leader of the council and Jim was an opposition member, he would be calling for your resignation immediately over this.
Without doubt. It would have been in the paper before a petition was out.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mary, I don't want to put you on the spot. You're not a politician, but as a local resident of Shotts, and it's okay to disagree. We're okay to disagree in this grouping. That's why you're a Progressive Change member and stood for us as a candidate. You can have a different opinion for yours. But as a local resident of Shotts, do you believe he should go?
I think we should have answers to questions.
But they're no forthcoming.
Well, I think we should have the answers to questions. How you get that, I don't know. but I think we need answers to questions and to find out who's responsible for what.
Well, I hope
Because
he's
there's
listening
more.
this evening, because that
You
was
mean
very
transparency?
diplomatically put there, Mary.
Transparency.
Do you know, I'm going to tell you why I don't, Cllr, I'm going to be clear as to why I don't think we're going to get that transparency. Right? The law doesn't allow it, because the confidentiality agreement's there. And this case, as I understand it, was brought to the Court of Session in July of last year. This case is settled now. It's settled at the end of March, and we're now coming towards the end of June, and we've heard absolutely nothing from anyone about it. And in fact, had we not made any noise about this, you would carry on blissfully unaware that it ever existed.
By the way, I think you've touched upon something, Cllr. I appreciate that we're trying to answer your question. I hope we've gave you a concise answer, but there's just one last point I want to pick up on in relation to your call. Jerry's just touched on that there, that really in effect nobody would know about this out of court settlement, not an elected member in North Lanarkshire other than the leader of the council, which begs the question, and this is serious, this is a serious
It's
point.
very serious.
If this is a case that we've just settled out of court and a £31 million court case that was publicised in the press, well, that's the only reason why we know about it. And fortunately we know about it because 4 of your members were cited as witnesses. How many cases have been before? Potentially. How many cases have we settled out of court? For what value? Because ultimately if we didn't know about this, surely to God we wouldn't know.
This is a gold standard one, by the way. This was foolproof.
Don't forget, we had a full council meeting last Thursday. This could have been addressed. And listen, if they wanted to keep it private, so to speak, if there was information that couldn't be in the public domain as they may see it, not ourselves, there could have been a closed session at the end of that meeting to inform us. But most members will have found out about that on Sunday, reading the Sunday Mail.
There's a clause in the Local Government Act which permits councils to keep certain commercial information confidential,
which I was referring to.
And that, but that is specific, Paul, and that refers to contracts for services and for the potential sale of land or asset by a council. So the terms of that is quite rightly kept back from the public domain.
Mary.
This is neither. This is neither a commercial arrangement nor is it to do with a contract. This is to do with a settlement.
Mary, final point.
Well, I'd quite like to understand how that money is accounted for.
What within the overall budget? We're interested in that as well.
Because, you know, there's all these reports go to committee and it's all detailed, itemised, etc, etc. So for me, I would like to know, well, where did that fit in?
We're looking at a £13.5 million budget deficit this year alone. So £13.5 million, and we just settled out of court for 31 million. My goodness.
I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, right? But we're going to hopefully move on to some of the budget information. Greg, I know you're on a call. Do we want to thank this caller for...
Thank you so much, and thank you, Jerry, for reminding me we had a call.
Thanks very much.
Thank
you. See you after.
Thank you.
Good man, thanks. I did a wee bit of... We went to a budget briefing on Thursday, right? Now, no disrespect to anybody who organised that, but for 77 members to attend a budget meeting and to receive nothing beforehand, not to have the ability to scrutinise what was going to be discussed, or indeed have the opportunity to ask any questions, was really poor.
To ask questions.
We have another call.
Give me 2 seconds. Hello there, caller.
Hello.
Hi there. How are you doing? This is What's the Point?
My point is about the £31 million, and you know, and county boards could have been part of that in the past as well. But you know, this £31 million will affect the public in such huge ways. Care packages, nursery school, everything. And I don't think the public know the extent that this will go to. You know, but that's not the final figure. What was the legal costs and you know, the money still to be paid out to the contract that's been awarded, etc, etc. It's shocking. and I know there's an NDA, but it should just stop.
Caller, could you turn your TV down or your radio down in the background, please?
Alexa, stop. Yeah.
That's better. So to come to your point, caller, in relation to the overall value and cost of this is, to be honest, we don't know, but we have to work on the premise that it was a £31 million out of court settlement. But what we can do is look at the costs associated in the periphery of this case as well. So we'll come back to the point of £4.2 million in relation to external consultancy fees. They can start to talk about all these different things, and you're right to highlight what is the impact of frontline services on that.
Greg, we went to caller. Thanks for getting in touch, and it's a really important point. Here's where things become really difficult for elected members to have any meaningful understanding of how much money is going out of our council. Right? We went to a budget meeting, and they give officers do their best to give figures about whether or not we have there's a pessimistic outturn position, there's an envisaged outcome position, and there's an optimistic outcome envisaged over the next 3 years. And here's the figures, right? So the optimistic one is that we will have a deficit of 42 million, right?
Yep.
The envisaged figure is 86 million.
Mm-hmm.
And the pessimistic vision is 157 million pounds. So I can't, as an elected member, take you from 42 to 157 million pounds of a differential overnight. And I certainly can't if I go to attend these budget meetings and I don't even have a paper to look at or read prior to that.
Yeah. And again, caller, listen, everything that you've said, I think we would firmly agree, because we're in the dark at the moment as much as the people listening at home. But what I do think is again, from our own perspective, we'll continue to champion this, because I think that's too much an important subject matter for people to just be ignored. And even if that comes at our own sort of diminishment in relation to the council, then so be it, because ultimately we're elected to make sure the public purse is protected.
I think I've referred to it previously, but just to put it in perspective, if we're talking about 31 million, there was I believe a 17, I think council tax is roughly at the moment about 17 million a year.
So it was a 10% increase. For every percentage point we gather in about 1.7 million pounds, so there's 17 million additional pounds gathered.
10% increase year on year minimum.
So that was the point I was about to make.
Right. So here's what they're planning.
At that meeting.
Here's what they're planning.
Yep.
They're planning over the next 3 years, and the plan is to bring this to a December committee. That council will agree to a 3-year strategy where each consecutive year council tax will rise by 10% each year.
Minimum.
So get ready for that.
Can you afford that?
No, I already knew that.
Can you afford that?
To me, they factored that in already, because they knew this was happening.
Can you afford
and that's
it?
the way you call that back. And, I hate to say it, but it's like, allegedly, from my point of view, it stinks of corruption.
We can't comment on that, but
I know,
what I can ask what I can ask you is, can you afford that? If we're going to raise council tax year on year, we're going to charge you for brown bins, we're going to do all these things that's going to impact your pocket continuously.
What charges are we going to have next?
In a cost of living crisis, can you afford that?
I know. Food banks, etc. Now, brown bins, my brown...
Everything. Have we lost you? Oh, we've lost you. Listen, thank you so much for your call.
Greg,
it's greatly appreciated.
There's a really important element that we can't ignore, and this will be used by the Labour administration to justify the decisions to increase council tax by 10% every year, and that is, they will say that North Lanarkshire Council has one of the cheapest council taxes for a Band B property, forgetting of course that we live in areas where there's real deprivation and real poverty. So that's, I think, have we got another call coming through? Right, okay.
Hello, what's the point? How can we help? Hello? Oh, missed them. the person calls back in, we'll be able to grab them again.
I think
we're nearly there, but I'll stick to see for 5 minutes.
We're going to see if we get another one.
Comes on.
But yeah, so these are the tropes that are used by the administration, the Labour Tory administration, that they're one of the cheapest for council tax in the country for a Band D property, and they somehow think that this gives justification for these kind of exponential rises at a time where many families can least afford it.
Well, I think we've covered quite a significant amount this evening. I think that's us coming to an end now. As I said again, I was singing after that one caller there that we kind of missed. And really, in effect, all there is to kind of do now is kind of sum everything up. So where we stand at the moment, as I say, you've heard about it all evening. There's a £31 million black hole caused by Labour, who are the administration. Of North Lanarkshire Council. In addition to that, we've discussed the lack of democratic process that's in existence within committees, and we're now talking about potential closures of local assets such as John Smith's swimming pool.
All the while your council tax
is going to
rising
rise
through the roof, up your chimney.
If John Smith goes, it'll have a domino effect. So
really, in effect, all we've got to say is thanks very much for everybody joining us. Thank you very much, Mary Mackintosh.
Thank you very much for inviting me along.
Yes, it's always a pleasure and never a chore to have you. All I would do is remind folk that we have a current petition that's live. All the petition stuff is on the Progressive Change page. Paul's petition will be up there this evening as well. Next week we have a significant individual in Scottish politics coming on, Jerry.
A titan
and a national treasure in the eyes of some nationalists. So we're looking forward to that as well. But you've been listening to What's the Point? We hope you've had something out of this as much as what we have. Therapy. but listen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been What's the Point?
Thanks
for having us, gents.
Cheers, Paul.